Good evening. Assalamualaikum, everyone.
Waalaikumsalam, Prof.
Yes, we should wait for a few more minutes. I think there are only three more or four more students coming in.
Sure.
Assalamualaikum, Prof.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullah. I think we can start while the other students come in. Okay, we can please write your name and matrix number for record purposes. And then today we'll cover the conceptual framework again. We look into your conceptual framework before, and then we will also look into research questions. Of course, in the beginning, once you have set and determine your goals, you set up your research questions at that point of time, and then from the research question, you study the phenomena, and then you develop your conceptual framework. Okay, conceptual framework is actually to detect the key aspects of your research. So this is about concept, assumption, the expectation, belief, theories that support your research, your study. So it is from the conceptual framework, somehow you understand what are the tentative theories, what are the tentative theories that you look at, and then what should be the key tasks that you need to do. But one thing that you should look into, because one thing you should be wary of is not to be too focused on literature reviews. Not to be too focused on literature reviews, because if you are too focused in literature reviews, you will not be looking into something beyond the norms. You will be providing same thing that other people have been doing. So, but you need to look into your, you need to look at your goal. What aspect are you looking at? And then, and then when you develop your conceptual framework, you put the points where other peoples are not looking at, meaning that you focus into your other aspects, yeah, that you are not looking at, and that the people, the previous research are not looking at. So that is the key things. And then I will go through your research conceptual framework later, but I think by now you know that it should be based on your experiential knowledge. Don't ignore the experience and what you have, I mean your background in developing your conceptual framework, but it need to be supported somehow. You cannot just put in your content like that. So it can be supported not by you don't, because unlike quantitative research that focus on published articles, you can look at other form of what you call it, supporting other form of literatures, like annual reports, like year reports. And I mean, Bank Negara have their annual reports, or government reports, maybe World Bank reports, maybe IMF, or any other things that is not it is not specifically academic work, but others. Because if you confine to academic works, you will be repeating, you will be reporting the same thing that other people have been reporting. So for qualitative, we are not into that. And then the other thing is The other thing is you do not, because another one is I'm not sure where it mentioned that um a lot of okay, we'll go there later, because there's another point that I want to say is on the generalizing. Yeah, quantitative research do a lot of generalizing. When they do their work, they will generalize based on because they pick up their paradigm is positivism. Their paradigm is positivism. You must understand. Positivism means that whatever happened, there must be something outside there that can explain the situation. There must be some theory outside there that explain the situation. That is what we call positivism. But our model is not positivism. We don't look into generalization so much that, but we want to look into differences, variation. Yeah, because when you interview people, some people will say like this, some people will say differently. We look into variation. We want to understand and interpret the realities, not so much of generalizing. When you generalizing too much, and then you do not see the variation, the differences between people, and then why do this group of people say so and so? Why do this group say so and so? You will not be able to appreciate that. You generalize too much. So that's why when you develop your conceptual framework, you focus on your context. Yeah, you focus on your context. And then after developing your conceptual framework, the next step would be to develop, uh, and then whether you can have your hypothesis. And that is one question. Whether can you have hypothesis in qualitative research? Can you have hypothesis? Before we move into research question, can we have hypothesis? Jasmine, can we have hypothesis, Jasmine?
Um, I want to say yes, but you should also be willing to change your views as you start doing your research.
Okay. What about I mean, do you think we can have hypothesis?
Uh, Generally, when you ask that for qualitative, the answer would be no, but there would still be possibilities to have that.
Okay. One thing about qualitative research, we can have hypothesis, but not in the beginning. You avoid from having a for a hypothesis in the beginning, because when you begin with an hypothesis, you are preemptive. You are preemptive because different is as compared to quantitative. Quantitative begin with a theory. They look at the situation, and then they find a theory to explain that situation. Of course, there is an hypothesis. Hypothesis is to test the situation, the context against that theory. But for qualitative, we are digging answers. When we are digging answers, it's like when the police doing an investigation. Before they do the investigation, they already have the answer. Is it fair? Oh, you are the criminal. I know. I will find I will find the proof to say that you are the person, you are the culprit. It is not fair because you have preemptive. We have set up your mind. But along the way, you will be reading about hypothesis in qualitative research. Along the way, you will find supporting some content that leads toward a specific so-called hypothesis, because it is qualitative research is interactive. It is iterative and also interactive. So along the way, you will start asking question, you will gathering interview, you will start coding one by one, case by case, and then you will look into there are certain aspects before you reach your saturation point, you will see that uh, it is leading somewhere. It is leading somewhere. So we don't call them hypotheses, we call them proposition. we use a term proposition. We don't call hypothesis. Although it is similar like hypothesis in all aspects, similar like hypothesis. The difference is only that the proposition comes up later after you have seen uh, some proof, yeah, some sort of proof, some coding, some themes that points to certain aspect. So you say, okay, this is a proposition. Now, when you have a proposition, you need to dig further to prove your proposition.
Because
Yeah,
Professor, it's like so we don't have to call it hypothesis, because even like if you take it by the name itself, if you have it later, that is not hypothesis anymore, because
yeah.
hypothesis is something you assume before you start.
Mm.
But once you are in, it's not called hypothesis anymore, like by nature of the word.
Yes.
So,
So,
so we can just put that word outside completely,
okay, but
and we can use propositions for
yes,
whatever we want to use.
yeah, we use the term proposition because it doesn't appear in the beginning. It appears in the middle. So then, because once you have your proposition, and then you will dig more, you can actually. I give some notes how you can align your research interview protocols. Even some books doesn't call it interview protocols. Some book call it sort of interview guides. Some people call it interview guides, meaning that it is very flexible, it's not very rigid, it is a guide. And then you have some probing questions so that it supports. So once you have some proposition, you do some, you redesign or you realign. The term is realign. You realign your interview guide or interview protocol so that it the goal is now it's to prove, to prove. And then similar like quantitative, we also have ways to test for reliability. So I given some notes on reliability test, which we call the most common is we do kappa Cohen. Kappa Cohen is actually a pseudo statistic. So you check, you find an expert or even your supervisor can act as an iterator, and then they look into your codes, and then they validate your codes. And we did that in our qualitative analysis class to do iterator. That is to test for the quality of your data, meaning that the reliability of your data. But the difficult part in designing research, designing qualitative research is to validate your research. How do you validate your research? There is no quick quick rule to validate your research. It will depend on your conceptual framework. It depend on your research question. Okay, the next part that we will do today is research question. You already done your, I assume that all of you have done your research, your conceptual framework. Now, today I will give you some time from your conceptual framework. We move to the next step. I'll share my screen. Yes, we have done this. Okay, this is activity 2. We have done this. We have done your conceptual framework. Conceptual framework comes from your experiential knowledge, the existing theory and prior research, but not to be to align to this existing theory and your prior research, but also include your experiential knowledge. You can do exploratory research or pilot research, and then you can have thought experiment. Thought experiment, you need to read about that thought experiment. There are some articles. You just search thought experiment is done before. In fact, before we have a proper research model like experimental research, uh, this quantitative research, the previous researcher, you name the old researcher, Einstein, Newton, all those old researcher, they use thought experiment. Everything is in their mind. They just use thought experiment. They don't They don't prove anything. This, and for example, Newton with the gravity, Einstein, MC squared, they use thought experiment. So thought experiment is something that every human being can do. Especially we as a researcher, we should be able to do thought experiment. But we use thought experiment to develop our conceptual framework, and then the next step we still need to do some other steps to validate our research. So from this conceptual framework that you have done, you will have something like this, or it depends. And then one or two of the students have emailed me their conceptual framework. It's very good. Now the next step is you should be able to elaborate and explain the component of your conceptual framework, and then you identify the places in the map that you don't understand, things that you can start studying. You okay? First, you need to do is actually you look into the book. Refer to the book. So the first actually you need to ignore first what we have the research question. Ignore your earlier research question because before you develop your research conceptual framework, you already have your previous research question. First, you ignore your research question first, and then you look into the conceptual framework that you have drawn, and then you find places in the concept map that things that you don't really understand, where you need to test your ideas, things that you need to test ideas, and then what are the conflicts that you have in your experiential knowledge and theories against what you found in your conceptual framework. Okay, and then what can you do to better understand the phenomena? Okay, when you do okay, let's look at it. When we do if we do quantitative research, the topic of the research is your goalpost. The topic of the research, your title of your research is your goalpost. The title of your research is your goalpost. But when you do qualitative, you don't really begin at the topic or the title of your research. You begin with the phenomena. Now you want to understand the phenomena. When you draw the concept map, the concept map is about the phenomena. So you have not when you after you have developed your conceptual diagram, you let go first. You don't really focus on the title or your research question. You let go first. You look back at your conceptual framework, you look at the things that you don't understand, then only you determine what are the questions which are most central in your study. You need to have a free mind. You look back at your conceptual framework. What are the things that you want to study, which are the most central in your study, and then what are the things that support that main research, main issues or main things that you need to study. Yeah. And then you need to connect this question to other components and then see whether there are things that you have left out. After that, then only you look back on the first research question that you have done, and then you check back what things we have yet left, and then are there things that not in the map which were supposed to be there, and then you improve your conceptual research question. After that, you have your main research question, you have sub research question. Maybe maximum you can go 5, but I recommend 3 and 4 only. The main research question is something that you cannot answer. If you can answer your research question directly, the main research question indirectly, that is not the main research question. This is the main research question, usually something very at the top, very hypothetical, things that you cannot answer directly because you can only answer them by using the sub research question. Okay. Yeah, so you can refer to Creswell on how to develop your research question, but it shouldn't be something that you can answer directly. You can answer them by answering the sub research question. So the sub research question lead towards your main research question. Yeah. Then only we will develop your method Yeah, we will start developing the method later after you have determined your research question. Okay, today we will look back. You will look back at your conceptual framework, elaborate, explain your conceptual framework. You have done it for the past week, and then you you from the conceptual framework, for example, like this, you see, for this one is to craft a knowledge of ecumenical leadership, inclusiveness. So these are the things that you're looking at, the aspects that you need to study. You need to study the tactical behavior. You need to study the strategic behavior. So all these aspects will lead towards how do you craft knowledge of ecumenical leadership. There are several examples given in the book. So in the book that I provided to you, the link. So this is what you need to do today. I'll give you some time, and then you will present later one by one. So we will look into the how you develop your course. Maybe each. So other students can also ask, so that you can have some exchange of idea. You can see clearly, because one thing about your research question and the conceptual map, conceptual framework, it is something that you have implicit. It is usually you have implicit. But when you when you develop your proposal, you are turning it to explicit. You're turning it into something that other people can understand. First and foremost is your examiners. Later on, when you start working your research, you need to be crispy clear on what your research is all about. So if you are able to explain your concept map and your research question to somebody else, and then they are able to understand you, you are there. If the other person are not able to understand your research question, not able to understand the conceptual framework, your guess is that the examiners might not be able to understand. So this is the thing that, okay, today we will look into your research question and your conceptual map again, the one that you have done, and then you move on to research question. Any question on the research, on the conceptual map and the research question? Next will be your method. The next week we'll look into your method, and then how do you validate. By the end of these 3 weeks, actually, you already have your complete, actually not the complete proposal, you have the skeletal proposal, and then you just put bit and there, here and there to prepare a complete proposal. Everything is already there. The main point is already there. You already have your uh, problem statement. You already have the conceptual framework. Now you're working on your research question. Next is your method, and then your how do you validate. Then you have a complete research proposal. Any question? Now we have done your problem statement last week. Then we have begin with research question, basic research question. Now you move into more detail in your conceptual framework, and then you realign uh, your research question. Any question before I give you time to? I think in Bangladesh, yeah, you're supposed to have your. I expect you have your Maghrib coming soon.
Yes, Prof.
Yeah. So we
Prof.
just yes.
I have a question. Actually, I need to share my thoughts with you. Like up to this point, until I began your class, I was thinking about quantitative research. So I'm slowly internalizing the things that you have said, and I have started reading the Maxwell book, and I have read 100 pages or so. So I haven't yet built my conceptual framework, because I'm just internalizing the things, then I will work on it. So will we have some official deadline? Like I can, now I'm learning and I will fine tune my conceptual framework and then submit it to you, because my framework is not yet done.
Okay, the official deadline is 2 weeks after the last class, because you will submit all the 6 activities that I've given to you. Then I will mark it up, do the marking, and then submit to the mail. 2 weeks after the final. But but you attended my class. Usually we do progressively so that you don't have with the end of 2 weeks it's just finalizing because we will be done before the end of the 3 weeks. Or previously we do data analysis, you are done during the 5 weeks. And then the additional week is just for you to improvise.
Yes, Prof, I do understand and appreciate your thoughtfulness, but since I'm new to this field, I'm taking some time to just understanding the materials. There are so many, so I'm reading and I'm trying hard, but until today, I couldn't build my conceptual framework.
Okay.
I had to shift my thinking from quantitative to qualitative. So having a hard time doing that.
Okay.
So I just want to I just want a reassurance from you that this is not the final one we are doing. We will have time,
no,
right?
we still have time. This is progressive. This is progressive.
Thank you, Prof.
Okay. Any question? Yasmin, Farah, Muhammadin, Amin?
So,
Yes.
Doctor, now what are we supposed to do now? We said like we have to elaborate.
You have to elaborate your conceptual framework, and then you will
elaborate
develop
as in what? We have to write something, or we have
you have to write something.
explain
At least some points. At least some points. Okay, there in your conceptual framework, it leads to something. There you have some components of it. Say like me share. I use this the one that I've showed to you as an example. For example, we have this. Oh, this is an example conceptual framework. If your conceptual framework is like this, so you explain what is the leadership context, what is the relationship with relation context with the leadership roles, perceived leadership roles, and then what are okay. You first you elaborate the conceptual framework as long as there are points because I need you to present.
Okay, so now we need to prepare on the map itself.
Yes, or you can put in another slide. You can just put in another slide.
Like, I mean, like, I'm just asking if we are supposed to write some text or we can just present on the map that we have.
You can just present on the map. No problem, because for today you just present it. But for your actual proposal, you have to elaborate it. For your actual proposal.
Because actually, like when I got the things on the map, because I have them already like here and there, so I just put them. So do I need to put them again into points? Or?
At least if you can put the relationships here.
Okay.
If you because here there is no relationship, but if you can put the relationship, so then you can elaborate it during presentation. During your presentation later, you just elaborate what is the conceptual framework about, and then you move into the question. Okay, how do you move into the question? Is you look into areas in this conceptual framework, your own conceptual framework that requires answers. What are the key aspects that you require that we want to see? What in the conceptual framework we want to see? What are you studying? What are you studying? Okay, this is somebody else. We'll look into yours. We think I've seen Yasmin. What are you studying? You have a conceptual framework. Okay, what are you studying? What are the pertinent issues there? Why do you need to study that? Okay, these are the research questions. Okay, the next step will be how do you study that? How do you study that is the method. Okay, we look into the ontology epistemology. Ontology is the conceptual framework. Ontology is the conceptual framework because there are relationships among the concepts. But the method is how do you get to know it? How do you learn about it? That is epistemology. Yeah, okay. Okay, any other question before we give you some time? How many? 1 hour enough, including the Friday, including the Maghrib prayer? 1 hour, 1 hour and a half. 1 hour, 15 minutes.
1 hour, 15 minutes.
1 hour, 15 minutes. Okay, I give you 1 hour, 15 minutes, and then you'll come back. Together, both conceptual framework and the research question. Conceptual framework, you can just draw the diagram. As long as you can explain, it's good enough. You don't have to write the detail. Writing the detail will be in your detail proposal that you submit to your faculty later. But the research question, I need to see it in the PowerPoint. Okay. Okay, we can we can go now. 1 hour, 15 minutes. Okay. Okay. Everybody done?
Stop.
Okay, who want to start first? You show your conceptual framework. Let's just share. We'll see how it works. And then when you point down to your research question, you point out what is in the conceptual framework, which part of the research question, which part of the conceptual framework that require answers that you will do study on that particular problem. It can be an overall, which is your general research question, and also your sub research question. And then it need not be relationship. It can be a particular concept in the that you need to understand further, or relationship between the concept to another concept that strengthen the issue, and then you will be most probably you will have your proposition, something that you can come up with from your study. Okay, who would like to share first?
Could I go first, Prof?
Okay, okay, yes, please.
Sorry. Okay, let me try put it up first. Okay. This is my, sorry, it's not moving. All right, this is my conceptual framework. It is a bit overwhelming, but again, I try to make it as detailed as possible because really for my own personal purpose, so that I could have a bird's eye view of my research area and possibly look at concepts that may affect it. So beginning at the top left side, which is now highlighted in blue, integrated report actually arose out of stakeholder demand for non-financial information. And because there was a high demand for this, the international IR framework was established back in 2013. Currently, a lot of public listed companies adopt it, albeit most of them from developed countries, mainly South Africa and Australia. In the Malaysian context, companies, mostly blue chip companies, GLCs, now adopt it in compliance with the Malaysian Code of Corporate Governance. But again, it is not really mandatory as yet, and it's more voluntary. So these companies, they produce integrated reports, which incorporate a lot of information, and most of them are qualitative information. And because it's qualitative, it's a bit hard for preparers and stakeholders to actually quantify or validate these numbers, unlike financial statements, which have very established frameworks. So because of this, the IR itself is inherently complex. And because it is complex, there is some stakeholder lack of trust, because studies have shown that companies do use their own discretion into what information they want to put in, because again, it's voluntary and it's not prescriptive. So because there's this lack of trust, where it's quite complex to read integrated reports, there has been demand for external assurance. But again, these frameworks are still very underdeveloped, and we still lack the expertise in having auditors that can audit different industries. And this leads to companies deciding not to externally assure. And again, in the Malaysian context, because it's voluntary, there's really no need to assure externally, so they just don't do it. And again, this actually leads to my research topic where, and alternatively, companies can externally assure it. But again, corporate governance is quite a tricky thing, self-governance in general. So you need really good corporate governance to make sure that your information is all validated. And it would be good for companies to have an integrated internal control systems that integrates the IR process into the existing control systems. And only then, when you have a proper, robust control system that also incorporates your integrated reporting process, then those charged with governance, this could be the board or audit committee, then they'll feel comfortable in producing a statement of responsibility to declare that the information is credible, etc. And that will address stakeholder trust. In summary, essentially what the study is, the problems are on the left-hand side in red. And what I want to research is the corporate governance framework that companies currently adopt, and how we can actually develop an integrated corporate reporting framework to ensure that companies actually have a very robust internal control systems so that the information in their reports are actually valid. This leads to my main research question. How can the integrated reporting process be operationalized to ensure a credible and well-balanced report that integrates both financial and non-financial information? And my sub-research questions, they correspond to the numbers in the diagram at the bottom. So the first area I want to look at is the corporate governance of the company. So is there a formal or informal governance structure that provides oversight over the organization's IR process? Number two, talking about the internal control system itself and the information. So what considerations are made in determining which information is most valuable to stakeholders, and what reporting frameworks are adopted to achieve holistic reporting to attain the spirit of and as prescribed by the IR framework. Number three talks about the integration of the processes. So how does the IR process link to the organization's strategies, KPIs, and overall existing internal control system? And lastly, number four, how is information disclosed in the IR validated so that board is comfortable enough to produce a statement of responsibility? That's all.
Okay, it's very good. Because I was like you when I did my study, because I also did a very big overview so that I can see the whole picture myself actually. And then of course also to my supervisor and to the examiner, some people need to look into the larger picture, and then we zoom into a smaller framework so that we can see where our research is doing. And then after you have your research question, the next thing you need to think, we will be covering that next week, will be where will you get your data from? So it will be data intensive. So where will you get your data from? And then who you will ask interview? Maybe when I see there are some formal, some informal. This formal is easy, sort of easy. You can get from document. You can have document analysis to have formal. But problem is the informal. The informal, there are larger number of stakeholders. We might be aware from the beginning, but some we might not be aware until we start going to the field. Then you see, oh, there are stakeholders that we don't see before we begin our research. Then these are the informal stakeholders that we need to take into account as well. If you want to develop the IR framework, so the contribution, or because we don't want actually mislook at certain parts or certain sectors. That is crucially important. Very good. So you move on later to identify where will you get your data from? Okay, next. Who want to go next? Farah?
I did partially.
Okay,
Yeah.
Shazad or Farah, who want to do first?
Everyone is ready. Maybe you can pick, Professor. So
Everybody
everyone is posing. Everyone is posing.
I haven't heard from you, I mean, since last week. Maybe you.
Could start, but Farah already.
Okay, okay. Let's listen from
Farah
Farah.
will be next.
Okay, Farah.
Oh, okay, thank you. I should share my screen. One moment. Okay. So this is my overall concept of understanding after reading literatures on both public and private service innovation. This is what I understand. First, we can see that on the left is my understanding from the literature of private sector innovation, and on the right is the public sector innovation process. And what I want to study is actually in the blue box. So first we start on the left. Originally, the idea of innovation comes from Schumpeter in 1934. It is used during the product development cycle, which has three phases: introduction, growth, and maturity. So what happened is that in this product development cycle, for most public service, private sector, they have a research and development team which conduct market research and creation or acquisition of new technology. So this helps in producing innovation and creates new product and service for the private sector. So innovation has always been part of the process of product development cycle. As a result, this create capital widening and capital deepening, which is the main aim, motivation for the public service innovation, private sector innovation, and it also creates new market opportunities. So as you can see, innovation is well ingrained within the private sector product development cycle. If you will look at the public sector innovation, as we know, all public sector are governed by this complex steering kind of mechanism, which determines how it operates. So these governing bodies usually think about policies such as innovation policies and creates medium of transformational leadership and climate for innovation. So this actually helps public service to create new processes and services and produce administrative reforms. And in the end, the aim of public service innovation is usually to get or acquire societal change. So as you can see, the public service innovation is incremental, meaning it is a process, and it's not required of, it's not necessarily required in that sense, because there is a governing body that actually think about how to improve this administrative reforms. However, when the public sector has created new R&D, the private sector created new R&D, the public sector implement this as part of their innovation process. So usually they do not create R&D on themselves or technology by themselves, but they apply. So what is interesting for me is to look at collaborative innovation. When public sector and other public sector come together to collaborate and produce innovation. So that is my main interest. So when we talk about collaborative innovation, usually instead of governance, the standard governance, there exists this concept of network governance. So it usually involves big data analysis, the issue of interdependence, and also relational capital. So when they actually collaborate with private sector, they do also they work together and they are motivated by strategic alliances where they use external knowledge, network, and also open source. Recently, there's this concept of meta governance, whereby they focus on governing this particular network governance. So meta governance is governing of governance, meaning when there are involved a lot of parties, there's another structure which help to establish autonomy and self-governance. And there's also the concept of hands-on and hands-off approach pertaining to incentive, operation, and outcomes. So this is somewhat separate from the standard governance concept. When we talk about innovation, another issue that is pertinent is sustainability. So in the private sector, design-led development has always been part of the process where customer centricity and prototyping is used. So this is actually implemented into the R&D, and there's an arrow going up, meaning that it's actually a circular economy where it ensures that all of the innovation are always being reviewed, always being current and relevant. So the simplified version, as I am looking at public sector innovation, so I am interested to see how does leadership play into this network governance. How do they inspire the creation of network governance, which is separate from the normal standard governance process? And how can this actually encourage a more sustainable oriented innovation based on design? Because our concern is now to solve not just societal change, but to solve wicked problems. For example, right now we have COVID-19, the issue of vaccination and all that. So those are really pertinent issues. So when I look at the map, that very confusing map, what I don't understand initially actually is the motivators and barriers, the role of politician. In public service, it seems to be driven by social and political actors who are facing specific problem and demands and choose to exploit these opportunities. So I want to understand, are there intrinsic or any specific motivation other than political actors, but also where does it originate? I also like to understand the specific governance strategy for this particular purpose of promoting collaborative public innovation in governance networks, which have potential to serve as arenas for collaborative policy and service innovation. And also, what I don't understand is this creative development process. How can process development, testing, creative construction, reconstruction of prototypes, which result to the creation of new innovative policies and services that is more inclusive, how it is being used, and if it's relevant in collaborative partnership. So where are the conflicts between my experimental knowledge and existing theories? So we know that interdependency between actors in multi-actor collaborative innovation is a main concern to establish this, because most agencies have their own governance issues and their own governance protocol. So how do they contribute equally and have the same accountability in that sense? Also, the issue of relational capital, trust, commitment, communication, which is very complex. Even within same agency, this has been an issue. So what if we work with another completely different agency? I'm sure it would be interesting. And also sustainable oriented innovation, which suggests that it is a rather radical process where you have to think of customer centricity and prototyping, where we know that public service and innovation is more incremental, is a process, and more towards administrative reforms. It's not something radical. So what I can learn to help me better understand the phenomena, I have to identify the drivers of public service innovation, the motivation and barriers for organizing successful collaborative innovation, the method and process of governance used during collaboration between both public and public agencies and public and private agencies, and what are the recommendations on key design concerns and themes during collaborative innovation effort. What I can learn is actually the answer to the above, potential drivers of innovation in public service, list of motivation and barriers for successful collaborative innovation in public service, network governance model. I wish to understand and perhaps draft out a successful model, and also the theory on design-led development for sustainable public service collaborative innovation, whether this concept of design-led is applicable. So what is the central question for my study? It is how to organize successful collaborative innovation through network governance and design-led development strategies, specifically for public service in Malaysia. That's all.
One main question and four sub-questions. Okay, bear in mind that when you do your research question and then even your interview question or interview protocol, make sure that your questions are open-ended. Open-ended. I know that there is one of your statement, you say it seems that political actors are more towards inclined towards blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a statement. You don't give statement until we collect the data, and then even for our research question and interview question, let it be open, because we don't want to put words into other people's mouths. Let the data provide us the answer. Let the data answer the question. So you just open up and do an open-ended question. So and then we have probing questions, but we don't say anything. Let people say.
Okay.
So and then so I see that you have one main question, four sub research question. That is okay. So later on, maybe on today or next week, I will share you how to do your alignment between your research question. You need to do alignment, and then every time when you need to realign and your research protocol, your interview protocols. We'll cover that later. Okay, maybe okay. Next, who wants to do? Shazad.
Assalamualaikum, Professor.
Waalaikumsalam.
Actually, Professor, I have done partially because I'm in process for changing my choice from quantity to qualitative. So in this moment, I am working on it.
Okay. Okay.
I heard Amin was supposed to do. Then I will do it. Oh, okay. Someone is doing.
Oh, yeah. My topic is forensic accounting and investigation framework from stakeholder perspective. So I have make a design from my understanding on total process. First, I have done my literature review and find the problem statement. And I would like to add some new area of work in the subject matter of forensic accounting because it's a very new concept and not widely used around the world. So primarily, I would like to figure out the existing scope of forensic accounting. Like that, there is three major part of forensic accounting used in some countries in the world, like investigation of white collar crime. Second, falsified documents and false claim investigation. And third one is the litigation support. In litigation support, there are two types of work the forensic accountant done, like that collection of evidence for court and working as amicus curiae for the court. And then I would like to find out some new area of forensic accounting from stakeholders. Stakeholders perspective, there are so many stakeholders using forensic accounting expertise, like a government, court of law, law and enforcement agencies, taxation and custom authority, insurance authorities, Securities and Exchange Commission, and corporate house. I will take interview and will make discussion with personnel from different agencies like government and lawyer and existing accountants working as auditor in different companies. And then after taking interview and having discussion with them, I will decode it by using NVivo and develop some new area for forensic accounting. This is the very basic of my understanding and my workflow. So that's it from my side.
Okay, I'll give you my comments, because what you do is actually a workflow for your research. So, okay, what we are doing now is actually a conceptual framework. Okay, the purpose of conceptual framework is to justify your research. The idea is to justify your research, meaning that we have a problem, we want to identify the problem, and then we look into the various aspects of the problem to justify that your research is worth doing. So, but yours is, I actually have yet to see, maybe you will be doing it later, your conceptual framework, the components of your research, meaning that it can come from your literature review, it can come from your thought experiment, it can come from your previous experience. So we will draw some diagram to show what the problem is all about, what is the concepts that relate to the problem, and then to justify that there is need to show that there is need to justify that there is need to do research. Then only we move on to the research question and so on. Yeah, so we will do that later. Okay, thank you, Mr. Shazad.
Thank you, Professor.
Okay. Mr. Muhammad Din, I think. Oh, Amin first. Amin.
I will go now. Thank you. I will just share. Okay, so this is like so far the title, like in my mind for the topic, is the use of card and solvency management for the Takaful Fund. And this is how is the simplified conceptual framework. I would start maybe explaining from this side, because like the insurance as like a need for as a service for risk management and provide financial security for individuals or businesses or something, but that had an alternative as in Takaful, which is more Sharia compliant, not so the Takaful was like derived from the Sharia mainly, as the Islamic laws were eventually like part of the Sharia is like the Muamalat, and the Muamalat eventually has been developing like since the beginning into various contracts and transactions and concepts, and in the modern time like this gained like big development where they put into more like at the financial sector, the modern way. And so many business models, so many aspects of finance in general has been developed. And then part of it was the takaful, which is sometimes it's called like cooperative insurance. In the current application, because I'm looking at the case of Malaysia, because so as the takaful here in Malaysia is of course coming from the Islamic finance concepts and the Sharia rules, and as well is regulated by the central bank, which produce, and also like mainly by the Islamic Financial Services Act, and supervised by the central bank that issues the regulations and the guidelines for the practice of takaful. And then when part of the rules, where takaful is put like, as I would just name it here, as like the performance when it's in operation, one part of the requirement for the takaful to be credible and sound and solid for as a base for financial sector in the country, and also to be as much as it's providing insurance for the people, it has to be serious, like literally providing insurance that they are safe to provide the service. And for that matter, there is the concept of solvency. It's like how much money they have in their fund so they can actually cover the claims and liabilities that they have to cover. Of course, because the concept in practice is like they have liabilities like potential of 1,000 people, they are not supposed to have money to cover the cases of all the 1,000 people. It's by possibilities and probabilities. So they come with actuarial calculations to have a percentage of how much of these people we might be, having to cover. So there are this kind of they come the rules that is been developed, and it's called the risk-based capital. And it's like the more you have risk covered, like as more customers you have or more participants you cover, the more you need to increase your capital in that fund. So what happens here is the case that I want to see is like this fund at some point, it might fall below that level. Maybe due to some disaster that caused like too much of claims that the fund has to cover. Or sometimes the fund is new, the company is new, so it didn't accumulate enough money in the fund to meet that requirements. Or due to the regulation change, because sometimes like the central bank will say, this is the limit, and then later they might increase the limit. So everyone must meet that new minimum. So by the concept and in the law, and it was said that qard has to be used in case of a deficit in the takaful fund. If the money is not meeting that minimum requirement, the operator must present the loan from their money and pump it inside the takaful fund. So here is what I want to study is like this concept is how this tool is, as a contract is just a loan, but how it is being applied in this business and in this model itself, and how did they come to choose this one, and what are the features and how it is done, and what is the Sharia basis of using this method, this tool into the solvency. Because this use, this like this how to say, imposing this tool that you must use this way has caused some issues. And the issues can be like financial issues, or like business issues and also Sharia issues. For example, like the qard, the loan, like very simple from the nature of it is have to be voluntary. You have to give a loan, you have to be doing voluntarily. But here it is, you are forced by the regulator to give. So there is some kind of Sharia issue here. How is that addressed? How that came to be? So, and also there are issues like the financial issues. It caused the operators to have a big burden to pump in money continuously to keep with the limits, although it might not be needed. And also that is the nature of being qard. They have to pay back, like the fund of takaful have to pay back for the operator. Who will pay back is the fund. The fund means the resource of the participants. And so that is practically is taken out from the fund available for participants and have to be repaid back. And there is an issue of injustice, because I might be in a participant and then I have a big claim, and then I leave the fund altogether after they pay my claim, but then I leave the fund in deficit that other participants or the operator, they have to pump their money to bring back the fund. So there's like kind of inequality between previous generation and the new generation. So there would be few issues here, and which I want to study those issues through, like I need to go like interview with the like the industry people, like the takaful operators, and they explain what are the issues they're facing because of this rule. And then after that, I will be going to study like possible solutions. So how can these issues be addressed? Like, could the same rule be fixed or tweaked or amended or developed further to, go around those issues? Or we can have a totally alternative altogether, because we might look at alternatives from different countries, how they do this solvency management without using the qard. What is the way they are using that? So could that be applied here? Would be added as a choice, like either you follow the qard or you can use this one as well. Or also suggested, like maybe not applied, but suggested by like industry experts or academic expert or whoever in the subject matter expert who have new concepts or solutions of why don't we apply this one or why. So kind of we like to kind of examine those alternatives suggested by those different parties. So mainly those are the three areas that my research questions are going about. Here in the drawing, it might be like kind of a big, like kind of overlapping in somehow. But I was trying to just to take things up and down a few times, and I don't know still if it's like the perfect way to put it, but maybe that's the best I could put it for now. And here is just, I want to, like the stakeholders they have to be like addressed by the issues here, because I have to explain the issues facing each category of them, how it is affecting the participants, how it's affecting the operators, and also the whole industry. So that is the conceptual map. And I would go here for the questions. Like I have 3 research questions. And the first one would be like about this tool. How is this qard is being utilized? How it is like concept is set, how is developed, like the features and how it is supposed to be, and like that, and then how it is applied in practice, like through going to the operators, see how they practically implement that, how they are managing with that, how, like, do they have to transfer money physically, how much that costs them, and like how they implement that, how often that happens, and also how this concept is enforced, to say, by the regulators. Because at some point of the law, it says like they have to keep solvency. How do they go and check? Did you give or you didn't give? And then also the impact after you give, how much you pay back when you, like, how is that being audited in practice? Who really cares about that? Or it's just kind of a floating rule that nobody really looking after? The second research question I will have is like about the issues. Now as you understand, how is that concept is working, how it is applied, how is it, like, what are the issues arising from using this way? Like first, I will check like some Sharia issues, as I gave an example about, like, for example, the card has to be voluntary, but here is like imposed. And of course, there are other issues in terms of repayment and in terms of investing the fund, because the operator also, they will have to invest the money in the fund. But then, as if they gave the card, they are not allowed to take a profit because they gave card, so they shouldn't have benefit from that card, while they have to also still operate it, which is additional cost for them. That's another. And also they will be like, but here I put it as impact on the industry, impact on participant, impact on the operators, but I might use the word like the issues, but either I would put it like by categories of the stakeholders, or I might divide it into categories of the issues. I would put Sharia issues, I would put like financial issues or business issues, like how is that affecting the business? So it might go either way, and I might need your opinion on that. And then the third question is possible solutions. As I mentioned before, that is the third thing I want to look at, is like, first one is like, how could this, like, as this current situation, how can that be fixed with its existing concept? Could that be tuned to get rid of all the issues or go around those issues? And also like, sorry, the alternatives, like it could be suggested by experts, or there are concepts available in Islamic finance here and there. So any of those can be adopted. And also it's like how it is actually is done in other jurisdictions, other countries, other regions. How do they deal with the solvency of the Takaful fund without using that part? So that is my.
Okay, Mr. Amin. Okay, you need to reduce your research question to just one research question, and then the other research question can be sub research questions of the main research question. And then you can have about 3 to 4 sub-research questions. And then the detail of your sub-research, your current sub-research questions, you can adjust it to be the interview protocol questions. Yeah? Interview protocol question, but you need to expand it, elaborate it, so that it become an interview protocol or interview guide. So just pick one most critical research question, become the main research question, or you can summarize the 3 questions that you have now into one main research question.
So it has
3 sub-research questions. You cannot have too many research questions, otherwise you have too many work to do. So you might not
So it
complete the
has
work.
to be one, not two, not three, one only.
One main research question, and then you have 3 to 4 sub-research questions that support the main research question. You need to limit your work. Otherwise, you will not be able to complete the whole thing. I see, because when you talk about takaful, especially Islamic banking or Islamic finance, another of one additional uh, stakeholder will be the Sharia counselor. The Sharia counselor is another stakeholder. You listed 3, one more will be the Sharia counselor.
Yeah.
And then bear in mind, because there are issues in, if even in Malaysia, there are several takaful operators or several Islamic finance operators. Each operators implement or bring in their own juristic school. Meaning not all, in Malaysia, we practice Shafi'i juristic school, but in the Islamic banking, none of them practice Shafi'i. Some practice Hanafi, and then there are some practice Maliki. Those that come from foreign institutions like Araji, they bring in the juristic school. They apply the juristic school from their home country. So there will be deviations in terms of these juristic schools, and then that you need to account for. And then also you need to look into where will you get, like similar like the other students, where will you get your data, and then this data actually will be it will be variation of data, very different perspective. You can see different perspectives between the Sharia counselors, especially when they come from different juristic schools. And then the Sharia counselor is one of the stakeholders. And then they are grouped into different juristic schools, Shafi'i, Maliki, and so on. And then we have the Islamic finance guy, who will have different set of points as well. But that is how we do qualitative. We need to look into the various aspects, and then how we can amalgam them into, and then you can make comparison. You can look into similarity, and then, but your when you have too many research questions, you will not be able to complete the whole thing. You need to focus into one, and then you maintain 3 or 4 sub-research questions. You can do the rest after you've done your PhD later.
Of course.
But you don't.
But out of the 3, like which one you think should be the main? Because I'm looking at how is the application and the concept, issues, solution. Which one is of those?
Okay, you need to identify the main problem first. What is the main problem, most critical problem that you can highlight to justify this is what your research is all about? And then if you have more than one main problem, you find the one that you can easiest get data. That the one that is easiest for you to get the data. Okay, because for qualitative research, we are data driven. We are data driven. We are not theory driven. We are data driven. So you need to know, where can we get this data? What is the problem? Can we get this data? If you can get, it is a crucial problem, and then you can get this data, that is the right topic for you. Okay, we'll go detail later.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Muhammad Din? Oh, Quasi want to start first. Okay.
Yes, Prof. I can go.
Okay. Quasi or Fazla? Which one?
Fazla Muhyiddin, Prof.
Okay.
Yeah.
Later the better.
Let me just start. All right, can you see my screen, Prof?
Yes.
Prof, I'd like to remind that as I informed you last class, that my research topic is my actual research topic is on quantitative method. I joined your class because I want to learn more about qualitative analysis. So
Okay.
actually, the one that I'm presenting now is not my actual research. So I chose my master's thesis, which was done in qualitative method. I chose that that topic, and I'm trying to present it. So so this is basically my conceptual framework. Before getting into that, my topic is actually I'm trying to understand HR. Human resource management has evolved over the last couple of decades, and there are newer forms of HR role, and newer forms of HR skills and expertise are required for the industry. And so my main topic is I would like to compare these different roles and why organizations choose one role over the other. That's what I'm trying to understand. That's the topic. So here, if you look at the conceptual framework, my central concept would be this evolution of HR role. And I'm trying to understand, basically my focus is on after conducting a literature review, I found there are two main HR role. The one is, first one is HBP or HR business partner, and the second one is shared service center. And I've also identified with this review that a HR business partner consists of these are probably the main element of this construct, human resource business partner, marketing skill, communication skill, and expertise. And usually, when companies uses human resource business partner, it results in more efficiency and more financial and other benefits to synergy. What does it mean? I will explain a little bit later in next slide, hopefully. And if you look at this left side, it's shared service center. Shared service center is again another type of HR, human resource role, and it consists of these three things: collaborative strategy, internal outsourcing, and supportive information and communication technology. And it usually companies that uses shared service center, they enjoy productivity improvement, performance improvement, more effective HR services, work simplification, and of course efficiency. And actually, what I am understanding the underlying change process, I found in the literature that there is this theory, evolutionary theory for organizational change is more suitable. So my central concept is evolution of HR roles, and and these are my peripheral concepts actually. So explaining this conceptual map is that, as I was saying, that it mainly consists of these three: marketing skills, communication skills, and HR expertise. And the outcome is our efficiency in the work. Synergy means basically HR business partner works as an advantage for the whole organization, and HR business partner can be used to outsource some of the organizational work, and that in that way it works as an synergy. And and other benefits for other financial and non-financial benefits for the organization. These are the main outcome of HRBP. Shared services mainly consist of, as I was saying, supportive information technology. You need supportive information technology, for example, good internet access. Without good internet access, you probably do not cannot establish a shared service center. And other technological support you must have, communication technology, and it is one form of internal outsourcing. So shared service and the shared service is that you have, say you are a multinational corporation, you have 3 branches in 3 different districts or area, and you will have one central shared service center who will actually serve these three different branches. In that sense, it is kind of like an internal outsourcing. So instead of having a separate activity in each and every branches, what you do is you outsource your own HR services to these shared service centers. And shared service centers are used by many big corporations around the world, including Bangladesh. And the outcomes are efficiency. Of course, the works becomes more efficient because it is centrally managed. more productive improvement, productivity goes up, the performance, overall farms financial and non-financial performance improves, and of course more effective HR and work simplification for the organization. Because when companies use a shared service center, the lot of duplications of the same work gets eliminated, and this way work becomes much more simpler and much more effective. Because you don't need to have the same function in different branches. You manage them centrally in one location, and that's how the work becomes much more simple. Here, these are actually preliminary research questions that I developed. The main research questions would be to understand what kind of a change process is taking place regarding HR roles and organizational structures. We actually this is overarching research questions. I would like to understand what kind of a change process is this, and then there are sub research questions. These research questions are again open-ended. What impact does this change process have on the choice and success of these new roles and structures? What factors are most important for this change process to operate? What factors make one particular structure to be attractive and to be chosen over the other structures for the organization? This is actually, so here I'm trying to understand why organizations choose one structure and not the other. So what are the factors that are much more important here? And does the success of these structures depend on the environment of the business operating in? Or if so, then what are those important factors? So basically, these organizational structures, is it dependent upon external environmental support or not? If it is dependent upon external environmental support, then what are these factors? I'm trying to understand that as well. And finally, I'd like to understand, is it possible to develop a key success factors for these new success? That would, so it's kind of like a practice framework that I'd like to develop that can be applied in any organization, regardless of the environment it is operating in. For example, if I can develop best practice, probably it is applicable for Bangladeshi market as well as Malaysian market or European market or Japanese or United States market. So these are my sub research questions to understand my main research question, and that's about it.
Okay, thank you very much. It is qualitative questions that you have there. Okay, they are qualitative questions. Anybody else? Okay, Qazi. Yes, please.
Okay. I'm calling my framework version 0 because having seen the high voltage other frameworks, I couldn't call more than that. Anyway, but probably I can submit better. Okay, I read that, and from your slides, there are 4 different things. I can draw from my experience, I can from existing theory, from pilot research, but this one is from my experiential knowledge, and you can say thought experiment. So the other 2 I can bring in later. So high employability or employability generally of undergraduates in higher education in Bangladesh. This is the main crux of the matter. Now, there are theories, there are 6 different definitions, and I don't want to bore anybody here, so I will add in the real one. So I want to say that employers' feedback to both higher curriculum of the higher educational institutions and higher education curriculum change, that will have an impact. And also, employers can, sometimes I've seen, I was a teacher and I saw I brought in industry expert to my classroom and so on. So extracurricular activities or classroom guest speaking like that also affects. And in fact, there is another arrow here. It will come up later. Anyway, by mistake, it didn't come. So government policies, right kind of policy, University Grants Commission of Bangladesh and other things can also say, hey, you guys are not doing a good job. You have to do this or something like that. The government can learn from global research. World Economic Forum has said, these are the 5, which I haven't included here, but in future, I want to add those elements. Where will the government know from, or where will the higher education institute know from? Okay, some arrows are somewhere else. Anyway, faculty and administrators, they need to be, qualified enough, aware enough, and responsive enough, more customer centric, customer meaning student centric. Parents' education, upbringing also helps, even from the schooling. Where do they go to? What kind of school? Because if they know English, they have better English, they have better employability. In Bangladesh, if nothing else, sir, forget everything else. If somebody can speak well, write well, you have a job. I mean, that's what I don't know, my colleagues from Bangladesh might agree or disagree, which is good. Anyway, students' own learning beyond higher education institution, their industry certifications add a lot in employability, not just academic degrees, and it should have come earlier, andragogy, not pedagogy. Pedagogy is for kids. Many people mistake that. It's for adult learning methodologies applied or not. Sadly, I mean, it is not there. I see your methodology is so much andragogy. You teach us as adults, you do it, tell me what you're saying. But many other classes, not necessarily, not even at PBS, so I don't want to mention much. So here is the very childish, like I'm from a kindergarten, but I still think I captured the core points. I can build outside of these so many other things, but core is here. So what are the research questions? The main research question is how to enhance employability of undergraduates in higher education in Bangladesh. Okay, what knowledge, skills, and attitude do employers want to see in graduates? That feedback. What curriculum reform could make the biggest difference? Curriculum reform by the, of course, higher education institutions. What government policies can influence higher education institutions to pay serious attention? Right now, they don't pay serious attention. Oh, I don't care. To employability issues. Or maybe we now have a ranking of universities, but there's no ranking of what employers say, which are the best universities. In fact, I run a non-profit, and in fact, in few years, I might do the ranking and make a big impact, but I don't want to mention that. That's a different issue. What kind of innovative teaching methodology will help students develop both technical, meaning it could be engineering, it could be financial literacy, whatever. But do they give presentations in class? Do they go out and do some research by meeting the employers? So all these methods can be blended in the course, each course, as opposed to only exams and no presentations, no interaction with externals. Finally, how to develop faculty administrators so that they can support students in a day-to-day life of the university. I think that's where I stop.
Okay, Mr. Qazi, in terms of pertaining to your research, the first thing you need to do is you need to show that there is low employability of graduates.
Okay.
So there must be reports show that, because you need to justify your research. Justify your research. If you say it is high employability, then you don't have to do research. If you say the employability is low, and then causes people from Bangladesh have to find work outside of the country and so on, that is an issue that warrants for a study. So that then all this come into place. Okay, very good, Mr. Qazi. And then the rest, who else? Mama
Yes.
Dim. Okay,
Yes.
please.
Yes, Professor. Assalamu alaikum.
Okay. Salam. Okay.
This is my research framework, Professor. Actually, my research area is Islamic banking, and problem is failure of Islamic banking for application of PLS. PLS, this is my problem actually. Why Islamic Bank fails for introduction and implementation growth of PLS. We find out from there are two factors. There are two issues. One is affecting Islamic Bank, that is the risky product, moral hazard of public investment taker, knowledge of business of the Islamic banking personnel, and the mindset of Islamic banking. It comes from the past research review. These factors affect Islamic banking. And another is dominating of non-PLS product, that is Murahaba and many other products, that is fixed profit-based investment. These types of investment is available in hand of Islamic banking, that is debt-based investment. That is, they are very nicely doing their business under debt-based investment and in the name of Islamic Sharia. Accordingly, they fails to implement their main product, the profit loss sharing equity-based investment business. It is failed. Researchers tried their many researches. They find out the problem recommended, but it is still not working. So what is the alternative? In the society, researchers said profit loss sharing investment is highly needed to accommodate the general people and the SME and many others village people. They should be accommodated in the financial system. What may be the alternative? We think that the alternative may be Islamic Bank cannot do it anyway. They will not do it. They have the mindset. They will do their business according to the like conventional banking, because they have the available products. They have the profitability and they have the scope. But it needs some changes in the institutional changes. That is we think new financial institutions should be introduced for effective application of profit loss sharing, because we are not thinking the Islamic Bank should do it. We are thinking in different way. This product will be handled by a specialized institution, that is the Mudaraba and Musharaka is the PLS, that will be handled by specialized institutions, and a new PLS modeling is to be developed. That is my core area and novelty of the research. I have to develop a new PLS modeling as well as the new financial institutions matters. If we can develop these two matters, they will handle the PLS product only. They have no alternative option. The PLS investment will be grow. The new PLS modeling, it will support to development of PLS, and it needs some regulation also, regulatory matters also. That is, the financial institutions is to be licensed, rules regulation will be required, and this type of regulation will help to improve the PLS investment. And another matter is taxation. In conventional banking, the source of finance, that is interest, which is paid by the paid to the depositors, it is the cost. It is charged expenses. But in case of Islamic banking, the amount distributed to the source of financing against Mudaraba deposit, it is not considered as a charge. It is a distribution of profit. For this reason, the Islamic Bank has to pay more tax. For this institution, we are suggesting the tax should be the financing of the amount of under Mudaraba. It should be treated as a specialized, a special law is required to treat the Mudaraba distribution as expenses like conventional bank. So the taxation will be the similar like conventional. So taxation policy is needed to be some amendment. This will also affect or help development of PLS. And we have suggestion that the individual may enter into PLS investment, because it is a partnership business. I can invest my money in PLS for with anybody, and the company they in their memorandum article, it may a place for them for investing fund under PLS. In overall, if the model is working, we think the PLS will be developed and Islamic Bank will be relieved from their liability for application of PLS. This is the simple conceptual framework, Professor, from me. Elaboration, actually, it is which I said, explained, it is here. Islamic banks have two types of problem for using PLS. First is issues affecting PLS investment. It is a risky product, moral hazard, knowledge, poor knowledge and mindset, and dominating of non-PLS product. There is the issues. The failure of PLS development is needed to form institution, new institution to handle PLS, that is Islamic financial institution. A PLS model is to be developed along with the institution, and they should be regulated by licensing by the central bank also. And other taxation policy is needed to be developed as I discussed. Research question: what are the players in the map that you do not understand? I do not understand the new PLS modeling and the new PLS financial institutions and its application. What will be its fate? Actually, would it be applicable? The public will accept, or the government, or the focus group, or the Islamic scholars? I don't know whether they will support it or not. This is I have not adequate understanding on it. The other things is conflict between my research and the past research. Past researchers trying to solve the issues by Islamic Bank for growth of PLS. They are imposing the Islamic Bank should do it. But our experimental knowledge is Islamic Bank will not do it at all, because this problem is going on around 50 years, but it is reducing, it is not developing. So Islamic Bank will not do it anyway, and rather they will do their actual business predetermined profit base. And the adequate what question do you suggest? Question is formation of new financial institutions with PLS modeling and legal framework for only handling PLS product. In the next slide, what could you learn in the research that can accomplish your goal? Previous history of other related institution in Bangladesh in 80s, new institutions started side by side the banks. Its name is non-bank financial institutions. They started their business for handling leasing business. Now in Bangladesh it is called leasing companies. But nowadays they are doing also banking business also. In this way the NBFI is under now is legal framework. There is a law, there is act, and central bank given their registration, and they are doing their business. In the same way, we can develop our new financial institutions. What questions are most central in your study? Central question is how PLS growth will affect if separate specialized Islamic financial institutions along with PLS model are introduced to handle PLS investment products. If we introduce new IFI and PLS model, what will be the effect? It is our question. The main question, as I said here, and sub question which will associated to the main question. Main question is how PLS growth will affect, and the sub question is how PLS investment will be effective upon introduction of new IFIs to handle PLS investment product only. How a new PLS model will be effective for growth of PLS investment? And third question is, do new regulation guidelines are essential for registration licensing of IFS for growth of PLS? And the last one is, what are the changes in taxation policy is required for development of profit for sharing policy? That is from my part. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mohammadin. I think you have to discuss first with your supervisor, because the issue here is on you. I think you have to look into where you can get your data, especially when your main concept in your conceptual framework is to have a new model or new IFI, new Islamic financial institution, and a new PLS modeling. Perhaps you should focus more towards what are the characteristics of this new modeling, and then why do we need a new modeling? Whether because the current why do you say that there is the current PLS a failure? What is the failure? What does it mean by failure of the current PLS? For example, the current musyarakah, the current mudarabah. Why do you mean it failed? It maybe seems to be failing from one end, from the customer end, but of the banker end, it's not failing. It is successful to them. So when you determine it failed, it's from one-sided angle, perhaps, but uh, and then you want to develop a new PLS, whether this new PLS will cover both, will see as a success for both customer, the other stakeholders. There are several stakeholders, like I mentioned to Amin, Mr. Amin as well, that there are 4 stakeholders in Islamic banking. So, and then whether who are the most important stakeholders in the Islamic banking? Who are the most important stakeholder in any businesses? In any businesses, who are the most important stakeholder? The customer, the investor, the entrepreneur, the Sharia counselor, who are the most important stakeholders? And then from where you need to get the data. So I think that is my point. Okay, I think Sadia, you are not yet. I think you are still working on it. You mentioned just now.
Yes, Prof. But
Okay.
I can show some of my ongoing research that I started with one of my colleagues. It is kind of, we planned it to do on interview based, and we actually interviewed some people.
Okay.
Show it, or
Maybe later, later, because you're already at 11. Just I want to share a few things with the rest. When you do your research, most importantly, that in your proposal, then I noticed some of the students did not very good in their proposal. In your chapter 1, make sure in your chapter 1 it is your context. What is your context? If your context is in Bangladesh, let the issues and the problem is within your context, meaning within the area or scope of what you are studying, and then it must be current. It must be current, meaning that today is 2021. So it needs to be 2019. Your references must be 2019, 2020. Because by the time you go for your Viva, you don't look at your PD, you look at your Viva. By the time you go for your Viva, it might be 2022, 2023. And then if you get references in 2016, for example, by the time you get 2023, 2016 is obsolete. So it must be current as near as possible you can get. And then within in your context, it must be within your context, because I noticed that some students put in, it's not just for qualitative, also for quantitative. They put in references. For example, they are doing in Bangladesh. The references come from United States. Of course, in literature review, okay, because you are saying something in general, and then you need to zoom into your context, which is Bangladesh, for example. But your chapter 1, you cannot put something in the US and say, okay, this is the problem. This is an American problem. You're saying your problem is in Bangladesh. It is not an American problem. The problem must be the issues. When you start writing, you start with your background study. you introduce the topic, and then after you introduce the topic, you highlight the issues. What are the issues that are bothering everyone, especially the stakeholders? And then after you highlighting the issues, it is best that when you talk about the issues, you do some groundwork and then you put it in chapter 2, so that the one that you put in chapter 1 is the gist of it. So you sort of summarize it. So the detail you put in chapter 2. So I always start with chapter 2 and chapter 1 together. So that chapter 2 I can put everything in and then pick up the gist that I want to highlight the problem. I put in chapter 1. So I organize my issues properly. So issues will be in topic by topic, and then only from the issues, the several issues, I point down this is the problem. This is the problem. Problem you can put in a single sentence, but you elaborate it in maximum 4 pages. Don't go up to 13 pages, 12 pages. Some people did that. Just 4 pages is enough to show that you really understand your problem. Then you have a problem statement. And then only you have your research question. Research question is things that you don't understand about your problem statement, about your problem. And then you have your research objective, how you attend to the questions, and then your scope and limitation. So this, your chapter 1, the purpose of chapter 1 is to highlight to the audience that there is a problem, and then justify the need to do the research. So it must be within your context, because when you say your research you want to do in Malaysia, meaning the problem exists in Malaysia. If you put references in another country, so it doesn't support the need for you to do the research. So the problem is of course, there are many students who are like that. They put the research in, for example, case in Pakistan, but the issues in Europe. The issues in Europe. So while we are talking about Pakistan, I want to see the issues in Pakistan. Yeah, so issues in Malaysia, so it has to be in Malaysia. And then of course, when you put into chapter 2, you will begin with a very broad overview, things that have been practiced elsewhere in other countries, and then you zoom, for example, sustainability studies, such as SDG, and so on, and then you zoom into your country, and then you put the issues one by one. And then for chapter 2, it's not just copy and paste. Do some critical review. Do some critical review. And then it is best actually, when you do the critical review in chapter 2, you send them for public. You send the article to be for publication. You write paper so that from the paper you can get feedbacks and so on, and then you build up your chapter 2, and then you tie up with chapter 1, and then only you move to chapter 3 and so on. That is just something. Yeah. Okay. Any other question? Because there are things that I might not recall. If you ask questions, I can give some explanation. If nothing, we can adjourn for today until we meet again next week. Okay, bye. Assalamualaikum.
Assalamualaikum. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, Prof.
Assalamualaikum, Prof.
Assalamualaikum, Prof.